So this right here is the very latest Spectral from Canyon, and with it the brand has brought a host of updates, including its K.I.S, K.I.S or Keep It Stable tech, and it's actually reduced the suspension travel. I've spent around 2 to 3 months on this bike, and I reckon it's one of the best trail bikes you can buy, especially for the money. To find out why, keep watching, because this is the full review of the Canyon Spectral CF9. So as this bike has been around for a little while already, we won't go too much in depth on the features that you'll get on this bike. And that's also because it gets everything that you would expect from a Canyon bike. That includes the replaceable pivot threads, and there's a flip chip that changes the geometry and stuff. But Canyon has done a lot of work with this bike, so things have changed quite a bit. And notably, a lot of those changes come in the rear end of the bike. So this rear triangle here, all the tubes and stuff are a little bit slimmer, and the brand has done this in order to introduce compliance into the rear end. But all of that compliance isn't without a little bit of a bump up in stiffness, because it has changed the rocker link completely. So where on the old bike it was 2 little tabs that will do the pivoting stuff, there's now a 1 single piece rocker, which ups stiffness between the front and rear ends. So it's still a cohesive bike as you're cornering it. You just benefit from the vertical compliance of the rear end, which does great stuff when it comes to absorbing bumps and chatter. It's a calmer ride. Of course, one of the big headlines of this bike is that Canyon has given it less suspension travel, and we're not really used to seeing that in the industry. Usually they're either keeping it the same or giving it a little bit more. But here Canyon's done that in order to kind of separate it from the Strive, the enduro bike, the 170mm enduro bike, and kind of make it a little bit more towards the Spectral 125, which is the 125mm version of the Spectral. So that's a cool bike. We've got a review of it, we'll put a card up here. So although Canyon has reduced the travel on this bike, it gets what they call a linearly progressive suspension kinematic. So compared to the old bike, this bike is more linear, but there's still some progression in the curve. So the bike should still come with some good mid-stroke support and still resist bottom out rather well. But what you get in return is a more active suspension kinematic where it's freer to move and soak up bumps. And that's very clear in the small bump sensitivity that this bike gives you. So let's address the elephant in the room, and that is K.I.S, K.I.S or Keep It Stable. And from now on, we'll just call it K.I.S because it's easier. That is basically a unit that sits within the top tube and the headset that is designed to keep the front wheel tracking straight. And it works very much like a car steering. So once you've made a corner, you let go of the steering wheel, it will return back to straight. And that is exactly what happens on this bike. It comes as standard, so included in the price, you get it. It's completely removable as well, and it is very adjustable. So there's a tab up here, which you can pull towards you to make the effect stronger, or you can loosen it off completely to make the effect weaker. It goes without saying that this is quite the statement from Canyon. It's a bold move, and it cements the brand's confidence in this bit of tech, and I'm sure we'll see it on bikes to come. So if we round off the feature list here, the rear wheel size can be changed as and when you like. Before, Canyon used to have bikes with set wheel sizes and you couldn't change the wheel size. But here there's a flip chip in the chainstay. So all you need to do is undo that, flip them around, pop them back together, and you can put in a bigger rear wheel or a littler rear wheel. Here we've got the 650B rear wheel, and it came as standard. And then Canyon has graced the bike with quite a serious overhaul when it comes to on-bike storage. So it comes right up in line with modern bikes. It's got down tube storage that's accessed through kind of like a door and a down tube. And then there are 3 mounts on the bottom of the top tube, which allows you to carry, say, a 2-bolt accessory strap mount or something like that. And then, like we've got here, a single multi-tool. So you can carry almost everything you need on your bike. With that, Canyon also supplies 2 kind of tool wraps. It depends if you're buying from Europe or you're getting it from the UK. But in here, we've got one that comes with tire levers. It can hold a tube, and there's a CO2 canister and inflator in there as well. So that is basically everything you need, especially when you consider the fact that we've got a full multi-tool here too. There are a couple of other cool features. So there is a new kind of guard around the chainstay and front triangle here, which stops dirt from cracking in between the 2 ends. And we get a built-in chain guide. So if we move on to the geometry, and it's been a bit of a contentious subject for me. I was quite a fan of the 485mm reach on the old bike, but For this new range, all of the frame sizes get a reach that's now 15mm longer. And this has been done for two reasons. One, to kind of bring the sizing concept that Canyon has crafted in line with its recent e-mountain bike lineup, which is quite long. But it also allows riders, combined with low standovers, low seat tubes and long dropper posts, it gives them the option to size up or size down depending on the kind of ride that they're looking from their Spectral. Smaller riders can size up and benefit from more stability, and taller riders can size down and benefit from more agility. So with that in mind, on this bike I sit in between frame sizes, so that's the medium and large, and I've picked a large. I've been quite happy with the bike, but there's definitely a big lean towards stability with this bike. We'll get onto that a little bit later though. But it is good to know that if I wanted more agility, I could fit quite happily on the 475mm reach medium frame. So with all of that out of the way, let's get onto the specs. And this bike will set you back £4,800, and let's not beat around the bush, that is quite a chunk of cash. But for it, Canyon is being rather generous. So we've got a full RockShox suite with a Lyric Ultimate fork that has 150mm of travel. At the rear, damping the 140mm of travel, is a Super Deluxe Ultimate shock. So you've got all the adjustment you'll ever need, including, you know, the Buttercup's tech on the fork. It's all good stuff. Of course, we've then got SRAM's most recent drivetrain, GX transmission. Of course, that comes with a whole load of benefits. We've got a review over up on our website if you'd like to have a closer look at that. And then the brand brings in DT Swiss's XM 1700 wheel set. Of course, on this bike it's a mullet. You've got 50B rear wheel, 29 up front, and they are wrapped with Maxxis Minion DHR2 tyres. They come with Max Terra compounds, 2.4-inch widths, and EXO casings. The bike is then finished off with Canyon's own G5 cockpit, but what's cool to see is that the stem has had quite a change. It's had a remodel, so it now just looks a lot better and you have less chance of knocking your knees on what was quite the brick that was found on the old bike. As for the all-important ride, it is one well-rounded machine. And regardless of the fact that it gets less travel, it's every bit as capable as the old bike. But to start with how it pedals impeccably. It's efficient, sprightly and easy to crank up a hill despite it being marginally weightier than the previous bike. And what makes a serious difference is that seat tube angle. It's steeper than the old carbon models and it places the rider in a more efficient and comfortable place over the pedals. To put that seat tube angle into numbers, it measures in at 76.4 degrees, and that is the same measurement as you'll find on the current alloy bikes. Canyon has also messed around with the anti-squats on this model and has actually reduced it, but power transfer is sharp and the suspension does little to soak up energy. As I've said before, I sit in the middle of two sizes, so the geometry is a little bit of a contentious subject for me, as I was very happy with the reach on the old bike. But having sized up the new longer Spectral is massively confidence inspiring because the front wheel is far out in front, and that's encouraged me to stay off the brakes in areas where I would usually be a little bit tentative. In this size, it's a very stable bike, so when I found myself snaking through tight corners, I have had to take the bike's length into account, which has slowed me down a little bit in such section. However, the mullet wheel size does come into play here, which kind of claws back some very welcome agility. But this is where Canyon's new sizing plays a very vital role. If you want long and stable, more riders can fit over longer bikes, whereas if you want agility, all bikes get a longer dropper post. That's a 200mm dropper on this large frame. So they can also cater to downsizing somewhat. The changes that have been made to the Canyon Spectral's rear end are incredibly welcome. The compliant rear end takes a sting out of trail chatter and harder hits, while the more linear kinematic does an excellent job of soaking up bumps at speed. Generally, it's a calmer and more controlled ride, which makes for excellent composure, again, despite the little travel that we've got here. However, I feel like Canyon may have gone a little too linear with this model, as the suspension can sit deeper into its travel while cornering and through heavier compressions. For those with a little less experience under the belts, this isn't too much of an issue, but those who ride hard will want to put some bottomless tokens or volume spaces into the shock. But K.I.S is something that is very much worth talking about here because it adds a lot of stability to the bike, but it also adds a lot of benefit. And in fact, it works very well. It helps to keep the front wheel tracking straight, which is noticeable when climbing and when riding technical sections at speed. It adds another level of confidence to the front end of the bike as it works to mitigate the front wheel wandering off course in areas where grip is scarce. And of course it's adjustable too, so riders can account for all their weight and their speed and how they want the bike to feel. However, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all thing, and I'm not talking about people here, I'm talking about trails, because over some trails, K.I.S is amazing, and over some, I've kind of wished that it wasn't there. So where tracks are straight, steep, lumpy, and slippery, K.I.S comes into its own, because it keeps the front wheel straight and really ups confidence. But when it comes to tracks that have a lot of corners, and even in the lighter setting, the bike can feel a little bit hesitant to lean, and it's required more muscle to get the bike into a corner than I had with bikes that don't have this system. With that in mind, I found that to make the absolute most of the system, I've had to adjust it per the trail I'm about to ride. As where in some areas I wished it had been on stronger, and in others I wished it would be lighter for easier cornering. As such, for me personally, it's something that I would remove because it adds another level of adjustment that I'm constantly thinking about. I could be mid-corner and the front wheel could be wandering off the berm because it's on too strong, my own kind of mistake there. And then I would want to or turn it off basically. But when it's going down steep and chunky terrain, I've been loving it. And where it's got my brain working, thinking, oh, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. I think in my own riding style, it's nice to reduce any kind of thought that I need to ride my bike. So yeah, personally, I would take this out just to kind of limit myself, but just so I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm in the right setting for whatever trail it is. Again, this is included in the price, and like I said, it can be completely removed and any holes can be covered up with a blanking plate. So speaking of the price, the Canyon Spectral is actually bloody good value. Again, £4,800 is quite a chunk of money to spend, but like I said, Canyon is giving you a lot of bike for the money. And even then, if that is a bit too rich for your blood, this CF range starts at £3,300, and even then you're getting a really good build kit and a good carbon frame. So really there's nothing to really sniff at there. But if it is length that you're after, there's the Merida 140, which gets a 509mm reach on its large or long frame. It's not quite as long in terms of wheelbase, so it'll be more manageable in the tight and twisty corners, but you'll have to spend £6,400 to get a similar build kit. But it must be noted that Merida is not a direct consumer brand, so with a direct consumer brand, obviously you're saving more straight from the outset. But we do have a review of one of the Merida 140 builds over at off-road.cc, so be sure to check that out for a deeper look at that bike. So I'll admit I am a fan of the Canyon Spectral platform. I own the old bike and I still love it, and I got on really well with the Canyon Spectral 125. So when coming to this test, I approached it with a lot of skepticism. I wanted to pick out everything wrong that I could find. And this bike is held up really well, actually. There are some things that don't gel with me, so there's K.I.S, and the suspension kinematic does need a little bit of adjustment for my riding style. But again, they are things that can be easily fixed by the rider, and it won't cost you much to fix them. So if we combine its excellent value for money, its excellent manners on the trail, its excellent ability to get you up a hill, that's why I think this is probably the best bike to buy if you're looking for a trail mountain bike at the moment. Of course, that might change in the future, but right now this is an absolute banger of a machine. The one thing you can't really change is Canyon sizing, so I think the brand needs to communicate that quite a lot better, but it's worth putting in a lot of research into what size you're going to buy. This is the kind of movement that lots of brands are taking with their bikes, so it'll become common knowledge and something to expect very quickly. But before buying this bike, definitely make sure you know what kind of ride that you want from your Spectral. So there we have it. That is my full review of the Canyon Spectral CF9. It's an excellent bike, it's fantastic fun, and it does everything I want it to do rather well. Of course, there are some adjustments that I'd like to make, but all over, I've been very, very happy with this bike. If you'd like an even deeper look at this bike, head over to www.off-road.cc, where you'll find the full review and a first ride review. And as always, if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, where you'll find more videos just like this on even more bikes. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.